What do you do when the world's falling apart, falling apart, falling apart? What do you do when the world's falling apart? You have some wine. Hey folks, my name is Jen. And today on this completely and unprecedented, crazy ass day in American history, we're doing a video in which I wrap up everything I read in December because we have to keep up with some form of normalcy, don't we? I got a drink today because life. And also, honestly, some of these reviews make me want some wine anyway. So, here we go. So, firstly, I started off this month with 3 graphic novels. The first one I read was actually the graphic novelization of The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. The story was adapted by Robert Venditti. The art's by Attila Futaki, and it's illustrated by, or the color is by Jose Villaruba. So this overall was an alright adaptation. I did change some things within the story, but it's a visual media as opposed to like full text, so that's easily explainable. They kind of had to change things around a little bit. It did make this a little more gritty, I guess. Gritty? Yeah, I guess gritty is the word I'm looking for. It made things a little bit more grittier than it normally is, like in the books, because of Percy's sarcasm and like his full sense of humor and everything. So it's a little bit different in that part, but it was still pretty alright. The artwork was kind of cool depending on what was going on. I really liked the action shots. Those were pretty nice. And I also really loved the visual here of what they think Camp Half-Blood would look like. I thought that was really cool overall. But actually my objection to this adaptation does have to do with the artwork itself. Not necessarily this specific work, but more like the style that it's done in, which is kind of comic book style, I guess. I guess that's mainly where my objection lies, because I just think 12-year-olds should look like 12-year-olds and not like they're old enough to have a mortgage. Which is what some of these characters looked like in here. And I don't know, I wasn't really here for it, I guess. I did still give this 4 stars though. Then I ended up reading Ghosts by Rena Teljamir. This is about Kat and her family who have recently moved across California to go to a better climate due to Kat's younger sister Maya and her battle with cystic fibrosis. They are soon told that their new town they have moved to is a haven for ghosts, which the townspeople are all okay with because the ghosts are a huge part of their community. Maya is super excited about this, but Kat wants nothing at all to do with these new spooky neighbors. So overall, I found this to be a very cute story. I found the artwork to be adorable and very colorful. I really enjoyed the style of it and all of the colors and everything, and honestly, the idea of like a town full of ghosts and everybody's happy with it, I mean, I love that. I also thought the relationship between the 2 sisters was great. I really enjoyed that at all. I do have to say I do not have cystic fibrosis, nor do I know anyone who has it. So I'm not 100% sure on the representation of it, whether it's accurate or not. From the vague bits that I do know about it, it seemed like it was fairly on point, but again, I'm not an expert, so I can't say for sure. I was just honestly glad that the telling of this story, and that being an element of it, focused more on the familial relationships, the friendships that Maya makes, the sisterly relationship between the two, and addressing life and death. And it's not like yet another melodramatic teen love story to deal with it. Like, I liked that this was different. Also, I do have to say that I am not of Mexican heritage, nor have I ever officially celebrated Dia de los Muertos. I mean, my knowledge of it goes back to Coco, which is a lovely movie, and also my old Spanish classes in high school when we'd watch like videos on Dia de los Muertos and we decorate sugar skulls. Like, that's where my knowledge of it kind of ends, is right there. So I can't really speak to the accuracy of how it's portrayed in here either. It seemed kind of on par with what I know about it already, but again, it's not my heritage, so I can't speak to the full accuracy of it. But it is like a fictional work set in a fictional town who has this interpretation of the holiday, so I don't know, take it with a grain of salt, I guess. I did really enjoy this, though. I found it to be colorful and cute. I really love the ghosts. I love me some sister relationships. Kat could be a bit much at sometimes, especially with her fear of the ghosts, but I understood where she was coming from about 3/4 of the way through the book. So yeah, honestly, I'd definitely be down for living in a town full of friendly, lovable ghosts. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars. The last graphic novel I read was American Born Chinese by Jean Luen Yang. This has the tales of 3 characters, All-American Boy Danny, American Born Chinese Jin, and the Monkey King, who wants to live among the immortal gods. All of these tales are carefully woven together as the characters try their best to fit into their respective worlds as best they can. I ended up reading this through twice, actually. The first time I blew through this book, I was really enjoying the artwork. It actually kind of really reminds me of some kind of like, I can't think of it, some kind of like 90s cartoon, especially, I'll show you the pieces here with the Monkey King. Like, it just really honestly reminds me of a very specific 90s cartoon, and I can't really think of what it is. So if any of you see this and kind of know what I'm talking about, please let me know in the description down below, because I'm racking my brain, I can't figure it out. But yeah, I really enjoyed the artwork. I was really liking the story. The ending and elements of the book kind of gave me pause. Ultimately, I had to give it that second read through because I wasn't sure how I felt about it, or really how the reader is supposed to feel about this. By the end of it, it's addressing racism and racial stereotyping, both of which, as a white girl, I've never had to deal with. The racism from Jin's classmates really pissed me off throughout his sections, and I desperately wanted to bitch slap some fictional people. But what really kind of gave me pause with this book was the character of Chin Ki. Chin is Danny's cousin who visits every year, ruins his reputation at school and whatnot, and then causes Danny to have to change schools for the next year. So this character was presented in like major Asian stereotypes, both in looks and behavior, how he spoke. He was like a caricature, basically, like something out of an old vintage racist ad, or Mickey Rooney being offensive as hell in an old movie. It was like, that's what he was presented as, and I was cringing so bad while reading this, and I was very disgusted about it being used, that I didn't I spent some more time being disgusted by its use than by realizing why the author was using this particular character in the plot. I just basically wanted to reject it entirely because I was raised to reject those racist caricatures. It's not something that we want in society anymore. Shouldn't have wanted it ever to begin with, but like, the point is, there is a point to it being used in this book, and I just wasn't getting it on my first read through, so I had to read through it again and really look at it, because it's really addressing racism and still trying to be who you are despite trying to like fit in with everyone else. And I don't really want to get into everything with the ending, because I feel like if you haven't read this, you definitely should. So I don't want to spoil anything. I'm just saying that if you are confused or upset by what is going on in the book, just keep reading it. And if you are also a white person like me, you should probably read through this slowly, and like a couple of times, and maybe also do what I did, which was look up more about the author, and also look up some reviews and thoughts by some Asian folks as well to get a clearer understanding on what the ultimate point was here for this particular characters to be used. So in the end, I did give this 4 stars. The next book I read was actually the last section of Sleepy Hollow and Other Short Stories by Washington Irving. I read the Old Christmas section, as I stated in my October wrap-up, because I had read the rest. So I reviewed the rest of it back then, so I'm not going to talk about it at all in this wrap-up, because I already kind of talked in detail about them already. So we're just going to talk about this last section, Old Christmas. So it's separated into little chapters covering the happenings over Christmas Eve and day. The narrator is a youngish man who is reflecting on Christmases past as he's traveling around on Christmas Eve with no plans other than to have a melancholy, solitary dinner or whatever at an inn. He, by chance, runs into a friend from his school days who invites him to come home with him for the holidays. His friend says he's in for a real treat because his father, the squire, is pretty eccentric and makes a huge deal out of Christmas, making sure that all the old traditions of games and feasts and etc. are followed. So I enjoyed the Christmas carolness of this story, just from the style and some of the descriptions. Ultimately, it didn't pack the emotional punch that Christmas Carol has. Was a little disappointed in that. But I mean, that is my fault entirely, though, because I was hoping for something similar to Christmas Carol and it just didn't deliver. So that's not really the story's fault. That's on me for wanting Christmas Carol without reading Christmas Carol. So a lot of things happened in this particular story. There were games and whatnot, foods and things that I ended up having to look up because as far as I know, I don't think anyone really plays them anymore. I mean, maybe they still play them in England? I don't know. Are there any English people on here? Do you play Blind Man's Buff anymore and stuff like that? Is that something that still happens? Or is that just like old movie stuff? I don't know. I know you guys do crackers, which I'm kind of jealous about. Your crackers like freaking phenomenal. But yeah, anyway, I ended up having to look some of them up because I didn't know what they were, which was fun. It did sound like it was a pretty good time for the most part. There was a little bit that kind of weirded me out, which I'll talk about. I did find the family to be incredibly welcoming and warm overall, because I mean, they just pulled this random dude in who was an old friend of one of the kids, and they just pulled him into the festivities and just made him like one of the family basically for the holiday. And that takes a pretty nice, like, a group of people, I guess, to do that, to just welcome a stranger in to your family celebration. So that's, was pretty nice. Things that bugged me. So there were potential skeevy behavior by an old bachelor who is featured in here. He was entertaining the children, but took an special interest in a young girl who was described as a young girl of about 12 or 13. So that's not okay. Did not like what was alluded to there. Then again, I have to say, I am not an expert on this period. So perhaps with context as to behaviors of the time, it was not meant to be skeevy at all. But instead, like, you know, how a goofy uncle teases his niece or something. Maybe that was the behavior. But just from, like, a modern person reading this, I don't know, I kind of thought that was implied to be a little gross. With an old guy acting with a young girl, and I didn't like it. Yeah. So that's one thing that bothered me. Another thing was the squire himself. I thought he was a bit full of himself and pompous. I mean, he did treat his servants nice for Christmas, which is something, but he also had a lot of opinions about, like, the working class, i.e. his tenants, basically, thinking that they should just work all year long and do exactly as they're told by their lords and not seek education or better themselves because, like, once a year at Christmas their lords will, I don't know, give them the day off and a goose with some wine. Like, fuck that noise. What a pompous little shit. The squire sucks. But he is a backwards old man in a moldering old mansion, and this was written a long time ago. So yeah. Taking all of the tales into consideration, not just this one, but taking them all into consideration, I ended up giving this collection overall 4 stars. So the next book I read was actually an audiobook while I was making Christmas gifts. So this was Poirot Investigates by Agatha Christie, which is a collection of short stories featuring Hercule Poirot and his friend Hastings. The audiobook itself was read by David Suchet, who is the Hercule Poirot. I mean, he's the guy who, not the most recent dude in, like, the movies and stuff, but, like, the original actor who played him in, like, the old PBS, like, specials in the show and everything like that. So, of course, his Poirot is the best. It was delightful to listen to. The mysteries were all just wonderfully crafted. I guessed only one ending out of the whole bunch, I think. I do have to say there were some weird choices in a couple of the stories that were kind of derogatory, that I definitely, you know, not okay. But it did show the age of the collection overall. But the observations on people and society were, other than that, fairly on point. Like I said, all of the mysteries were well crafted, and I think my favorite was probably the last one. I'm sorry I don't have as much to comment on these, but I was kind of multitasking while I was listening to the book, so I didn't take as many notes as I usually do with stuff. So there we have it. Anyway, I gave this collection 4 stars. So the next book I read was The Book of Three by Lloyd Alexander. This is book 1 in the Chronicles of Prydain series. This follows a young boy named Taran, who is the assistant pig keeper for the wizard Dalbin in a small village called Caer Dalbin. Taran longs for adventure and wants to prove himself by fighting Aron, who is like this world's big baddie. He'd rather be a hero than just beating and washing Henwin, who is Dalbin's pig, who is also an oracle. Adventure comes all of a sudden when Henwin ends up escaping, and Taran must race off after her in the forest and find her before the big baddie does, because the big baddie wants to use her oracle powers. The Black Cauldron is the next of the adventures, which I also read in December as well. And it features Taran. Actually, both of these feature Taran, as well as the feisty princess Elanwy, the over-exaggerating bard Fleur Flam, who I love, and the always hungry, furry creature named Gurgi. Not really sure what the hell he is. It's not really explained what he is exactly. I don't think he knows what he is. Yeah, there are other characters in both of these books. Princes, kings, warriors, an old wizard, Dalvin. Disney's Black Cauldron was based off of this series, or more specifically this and this, but like the first two books. But I do have to say, after reading these and having recently watched the movie, it is the shittiest adaptation that could have been done of these. It was like someone in the 80s just loved Dungeons and Dragons, wanted to make Dungeons and Dragons for kids, and then saw this series and was like, oh hey, and decided to make an adaptation and not really pay attention to the source material that much and only kind of pay attention to anything else, and it was just a mess. Really, if you like the Black Cauldron or thought, hey, that's kind of interesting, I would highly suggest reading this series because it's a lot better and the context is there, which makes it a lot better as well. You also get some insight into the characters as well, which is like, so the characters. So Gurgi is about as lovable and annoying as in the movie. The descriptions of him honestly are a little creepy. So I just kept kind of the dog-like image from the cartoon in my head while I was reading, and that kind of helped me not be as creeped out by him, I think, as I would have been otherwise. So if that would also work for you, you might want to do that. Taryn and Alonwi both started out as being extremely annoying. I did not like either of them for the majority of the first book. Taryn is headstrong. He doesn't think things through before he does or says them. Just kind of runs off his nut. He's crazy as hell. And also really annoying. Alonwi has a way of being incredibly insulting and making it sound like it's almost a compliment at the same time when it's really truly not. And she just talks all the time. Both of them are incredibly overdramatic. But there is character growth starting in this book and continuing in this book. I have, in fact, surprise look for January, finished book 3 already. And I have to say, there has been considerable character growth on Taryn's part. There's been a little bit on Alonwi's part. But, yeah, so the character growth is happening, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. So if you wanted to read this series and they kind of annoyed you in the first book, just keep. You'll feel better after a while. Because I did. So, basically, I started out in this book only liking the pig, who had no lines, and the bard, Flirterflam. And eventually I got to the point of enjoying each of the characters. Well, for the most part, there's one guy that can just fuck off, but otherwise, really enjoying the characters. There is a bit of Deus Ex Machina throughout the books, and the language is quite flowery at times, which normally I'm not about, and that's normally a pretty quick DNF for me, but the books are pretty thin. The adventures are exciting, the characters do have growth, and it is an older series geared towards children, so instead of finding it annoying like I normally would, I kind of found it charming, basically. I am very excited to be continuing this series this month as well. I ended up giving both of these books 4 stars, and I know I'm not really talking too much about this one either, but I don't want to spoil anything for anyone in case you do indeed want to read these. So, next, I ended up rereading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This is about Arthur Dent, the most normal and dull of Earthlings ever, as he is coming to terms with the fact that his house is going to be demolished, and then promptly being whisked away into space, and then has to also come to terms with the fact that Earth has just been demolished to make room for an intergalactic freeway by a bunch of jack-offs somewhere in the universe. Okay. So, he finds out when he is whisked into space that his best friend for the past several years. Ford Prefect is not an actor, like a failing actor like he said he was, but is indeed an alien. And not only is just an alien, he is also an alien who has been marooned on Earth while researching for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is a guide for people to travel the galaxy and learn all about those who exist in it. Shenanigans ensue. This was about as enjoyable as it was the first time I read this back in high school. I laughed audibly at a good much of this book. My favorite chapter is probably the one about the whale and the flower pot falling through the air. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point, it's freaking hilarious. I love it. The humor throughout is so deliciously British, which it probably sounds like a creepy way to describe it, but I mean, I'm not really sure how else to put it. I just really love British humor, especially in books. If you've read a lot of books like that as well, or you're from the UK, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. This was just a great time. The one thing that really bothered me, I do have to say, was the ending, because it's like so abrupt, but that was just also kind of on me because I forgot that it hops like right into book 2. Which I've actually never read. This is still the only one of the series that I've read, so I'll have to seek that out at some point this year and finish the rest of the series. I gave this 4 stars. Then I finished reading Water Witchcraft by Anwen Avalon. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's all about various bodies of water, from the ocean to rivers to creeks to marshes, ponds, and lakes. What you can do to take care of your chosen body of water, as well as use bits from it to work some magic. I found it pretty interesting, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I did my yearly reread of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Twice I listened to the audiobook while I was working on Christmas presents, and then I read one of my physical copies over Christmas Eve day and the day after. This is, of course, the classic tale of the ornery curmudgeon Ebenezer Scrooge, as he is haunted by the spirits of Christmas past, present, and future, in the hopes of changing him into a better person. Which a lot of people out there seem to, again, need to learn from. So, I loved both of these read-throughs. It really brings me a lot of joy and some Christmas cheer and Christmassy feelings. In a year that did not feel really Christmassy at all. So I appreciated it even more than usual this year, I guess. If you're interested in hearing more about my thoughts on this book, please check out my video. I posted it on the 25th of December. It's all about this book, as well as my favorite couple of adaptations of the story. So I give this 5 stars. Then I read Murder, it's upside down. I read Murder for Christmas and Other Mysteries by Agatha Christie. This was a bind-up of 4 of her mysteries featuring Poirot. The trouble with Agatha Christie's books sometimes is that the titles have often been changed over time. For example, I thought this was going to be 4 mysteries that I've never read before. And then I realized while reading through them that the last 2 I already knew about. So, yeah. Murder in Retrospect, which is number 3, was actually called 5 Little Pigs at some point as well. And funnily enough, I read that back in like January. So I already knew what that ending was. 13 at Dinner, which is the last one in here, I hadn't read it, but I have seen the David Suchet episode, which is entitled Lord Edgware Dies. So I already knew where that was going. I still read it, though, because I hoped maybe there would be details that weren't in the show, and there was some details, but like, I still kind of knew basically what was going to happen, so that was as exciting as it could have been. So yeah, Murder for Christmas, though, the first one in here, it was twisty and turny. I really like the ending. though I kind of guessed who the killer was, and was correct. Which, I mean, that's not, like, disappointing, though. That's exciting. It's rare that I'm actually, like, 100% correct, right, with a Christie mystery on who the killer was and vaguely what the reason is. So, that was actually pretty exciting. I felt kind of bad because the victim was a terrible person. He did not care at all that he died. So I kind of felt bad about that later after the chapter where he's killed, and I was like, ha, you jerk. Because he was a terrible, manipulative, just abusive piece of shit. And I felt that, well, I should probably still feel sorry that he's gone in this book, and I really didn't. So that's, you know, me, I guess. I was just kind of like, a good riddance. But, yeah. Anyway, the twists and turns, though. Twists and turns getting to the ending. That was really exciting. I enjoyed it. The Hollow was the second mystery in here. I realized about 3 or 4 chapters in that I had started watching the show version of it, but had never actually finished watching it for some reason. So, that's good. I was very excited that I hadn't finished watching it because the ending just blew my freaking mind. I was not expecting it. It was just, oh, pfft. I loved both of those. I even loved the last story, even though I kind of knew where it was going. I was a little sad that I knew about the other two, but, you know, oh well. I gave this 4 stars. To finish off this little rant, I DNF'd not 1, not 2 or even 3, but 4 books this month. The first I DNF'd was Holiday in Stone Creek by Linda Lau Miller. Now, I read this like 5 or 6 years ago, and apparently it didn't annoy me then like it annoyed me now. So I don't know if that means I've grown as like a reader, or if I'm just more ornery now. Like, you can take your pick with the explanation. So ignoring the fact that the vet, like the veterinarian main character, has a serious Dr. Dolittle like thing going on, because the main character's sidekick is an older foster dog who is sassy as hell and comments constantly on like her love life and stuff. It's just weird. And then also some animals are sarcastic with her, and you hear their voices also in the book. So ignoring this strange element that the author decided to throw in here, but into a book which I thought was supposed to be based in reality, let's get into what actually had me setting this down. The love interest. So the love interest name is Tanner. His wife gets caught in crossfire a few years ago and was killed, unfortunately. And this has caused him to be so paranoid he keeps his young daughter locked up in a prison-like boarding school most of the time, refuses to let her come home to see him a majority of the time, in some way of protecting her, I guess, but in reality is being a shit-ass dad. So there's 1 point, he's a shit-ass dad. There you go, 1 point against him. He won't let her be home with him for holidays. I mean, that just adds to it. His daughter ends up outwitting her boarding school, so good for her. Manages to escape by some shenanigans, ends up back at home with him for Christmas. Okay, cool. In the meantime, this guy has also had a couple of encounters with the main character that were pretty shitty. So he ends up getting all up in her personal space, knows he has made her uncomfortable by being all up in her personal space, and just smirks about it. You know, for making this woman who's a complete stranger to him uncomfortable. So that's dick move number 2. She, of course, ends up feeling more frumpy and worrying about how she looks, instead of, like, being angry that this dude is in her personal space, which is like, I mean, these romance novels, like, I don't care how attractive a dude is. If he gets in my personal space, I am personally crushing his man grapes with the toe of my boot. I'm not going to turn into some blushing freaking mess worrying about my hair. Like, what? Anyway, later he ends up being pushy with her again, so that just continues being a dick. And then, so this part was a little more subtle. And this is a little further along, which is about where I stopped reading because I got kind of upset. It gave me a pause. I was trying to read a little further and I was like, no, I'm not doing this. So there's this section here about, like, political correctness. Let me share. So he's out and about with his daughter and talking with her. And she says that Santa shouldn't be saying ho, ho, ho. It isn't politically correct. So he responds, ask me what I think of political correctness. And she says, why would I do that when I already know? At Briarwood, which is her boarding school, we call Valentine's Day Special Relationship Day now. So he responds again, what's next? Significant Parental Figure Day for Father's and Mother's Day. And she says, it does sound kind of silly, doesn't it? So he says, big time. And then it goes to his, like, I don't know if it's, like, just commentary. It's in, like, supposed to be in his brain. It's just he says that. And then it goes on this. And it says, he couldn't even tell a woman on his executive staff that her hair looked nice without risking a sexual harassment suit. Where would it all end? I'll tell you where it all ended. It all ended with me putting this fucking book down is where it ended. I don't know if it's just his character, because he's, like, supposed to be some macho dude in the South. No. Arizona? I don't know. One of those states out there. Apologies if you're from there. I can't. I'm really bad with geography. Anyway, he's supposed to be somewhere out west. I don't know if it's, like, some kind of macho cowboy thing that's up with him that she thinks fits the character, or if this is the author having feelings about stuff and just deciding to input it slyly into, like, her book. Either way, so I understand on a level that it feels really ridiculous to rename the Valentine's Day dance to Special Relationships Day. On the one hand, I don't get it. On the other hand, I kind of get it. It's a mix in my head. So I understand why you might feel it's ridiculous to do that. At the same time, I don't like the attitude that's being implied here. And I don't like, especially just being like, you couldn't even tell a woman that she looked good. Why do you need to tell a woman that she looks good? Bitch, if she's dressed the way she does, she knows she looks good. She doesn't need you to inform her she looks good. So yeah, it's going to be a sexual harassment suit. Like, I'm sorry. So I didn't like that. It can go fuck off. And frankly, I don't want him to have a happy ending. Which he's going to have because he's the love interest in a romance fucking novel. And he's going to have a happy ending. Everything is going to be fucking the Brady Bunch or something with him and his daughter having a new mother who's a veterinarian who's kind of crazy who talks to dogs and shit. So, I mean, you know, so I didn't like that. And I didn't want him to have a happy ending. And I couldn't be half-assed bothered to go on to the second story and read it because these chuckleheads don't deserve anything. So, I DNF'd this puppy. So, the next three. Hopefully, I will be... My explanations will be far shorter. I am so sorry for all of the rants. This is wine, and this is me being upset. Just reading over my notes and being upset again about these books that I didn't entirely always like, that I read or DNF'd or whatever this month. Okay. So, I also ended up DNFing 2 Sarah J. Maas books. Those were A Court of Thorns and Roses and also Throne of Glass. Now, you might be asking, but wait, Jen, why did you try to read these again? I thought you said in a previous video that you tried reading them years ago and couldn't do it. Well, my children, I tried again. So I have a project that I am trying to work on over the course of 2021. I'll talk more about it later when I get further along in it, I guess. Basically, that project would require me to read a Sarah J. Maas book. So, I firstly tried to attempt A Court of Thorns and Roses again because I figured, well, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, right? And I love me some Beauty and the Beast. It is my favorite Disney movie. The animated one, not the new one, although I do like the new one. Yeah, so I figured we'll go with that. I got to the end of chapter 3 and could not do it any longer. Her writing style is just really not for me. I don't vibe with it at all. I didn't like the characters that much. I'm also pretty against the whole beautiful dark fairy trope that is permeating through YA, I guess now, that replaced the beautiful broody vampire trope from a few years ago, which I also got really tired of. So apparently I picked the wrong one to try again. So I ended up just put that aside and was like, no, okay, we'll go on to the next one. What's our other series? Okay, we'll try Throne of Glass again. So I also did not get very far in Throne of Glass either. And again, a large part of it is the writing style. I don't vibe with it. It's not my favorite thing. It was again in the first 3 or 4 chapters, maybe. I'm sorry, I read an ebook, so I'm not entirely, I wasn't really paying attention to chapters. So I figured we'll try this. It was right about when she's supposed to be a tough assassin, right? And she's been locked up in these mines, prison mines or something for the past year, and she's trying to survive and shit like that. And she has a moment to reflect all of a sudden about how dirty she is, and that she must have been beautiful once, but because she is so starving and because she is dirty, and oh my god, her nails are disgusting and dirty and jeez, all this thing, I don't know, it just, that's the thought that's gonna cross your mind, after a year of hell. That thought, you're just gonna think about how dirty you are and how you were beautiful once, and you're not gonna think about anything else. That's the thought that's gonna, and I mean, why would that even cross her mind? Oh my god, I gotta think about how I look because I'm a girl and there's a pretty boy in front of me in a big old palace. Okay, so I know this interpretation of it might be me just being a little melodramatic, but it just kind of felt like it had the same energy as what I talked about in that romance novel that I DNF'd, where some fucking man-child is all up in your personal space, but you're gonna worry about oh my god, how does my hair look right now, as opposed to just crushing his man grapes with the toe of your boot. I don't know. Again, like I said, this might just be me being melodramatic about it, but it felt like that was the same energy here, and I really did not appreciate it, and I didn't want any part of it. But that's where I DNF'd it the first time, I remember, because I didn't remember anything after that. So I made myself get further, because I was like, well, maybe I'll just, I'll keep reading. I'll keep trying it. And I got to another chapter or so further, when she's checking herself in the mirror and worrying about her clothes and how she looked now, and I was just like, okay, no, I'm done. I'm done for real. I don't know if the whole thing is going to be like that, if this is going to be a recurring thing that happens constantly. I know this is supposed to be a Cinderella retelling, which I don't quite understand how exactly, except there's glass involved and there's a glass slipper in the story of, I don't know, because I didn't read it. I'm sure if I read it, I would understand better why this is ever considered a Cinderella retelling. But I can tell you that, I mean, at least as far as I know, in Cinderella, she's not, worried about shit like that. I don't know, but I don't know. Anyway, basically, I didn't want to stick around and see anymore, because if it's going to continue to be like this, it's going to be not me trying to get through this. It's going to be me hate reading it, and I hate reading things, because then my reviews get really snarky on Goodreads, and then I swear on here, and it's one thing to be swearing on here and ranting to you guys, and it's another thing entirely to be cussing out shit on Goodreads where the author's right there and can probably see it, and then I regret it later because, oh my god, I want to be an author, and how would I feel if somebody said that shit about my book? So, like, I don't know, man. I'd rather just not hate read a thing, so I just put it aside. And I was like, you know what? This is not for me. And that's how it's gonna be. It's just not my jam. I'm so sorry if she's like your favorite author ever and whatever. Don't fucking at me or something. Like, I tried twice now and I just can't do it, and I apologize. Well, I don't really apologize. I apologize if that upsets you, I guess. But opinions are like nipples and everybody has them. I guess what I'm saying is, I tried again, and I couldn't do it, and I'm giving up at this point. Sarah J. Maas's writing is just not for me, I guess. Which kind of sucks for my project. I'm going to have to revisit things and think more about what I'm going to read for that instead. The last thing I ended up DNFing was called Beautiful Bastard by Christina Lauren. I should have known what I was getting myself into with this one, really. The thing is, I've heard people on here on BookTube, like, talking up this writing duo. Like, everybody loves Christina Lauren. Oh my shit, they're the best ever. So, I saw this ebook available, and I thought, why not? Big mistake on my part. Huge. I really don't want to, like, kink shame anyone. If this is, like, if what gets you wild is an insufferable, insensitive asshole of a boss insulting you and making you stay late at work and then shoving you against the wall to rip your panties off and have at it, like, if that gets you aroused, that's your thing. You, like, have your thing. That's cool. Wonderful. Kudos for you. Congratulations. That's not my thing. It was not my jam. I am not the target audience for this particular series, I can tell you that much. Please refer to my earlier comments about pushy men getting their man grapes squished by my boots. So this was, Beautiful Bastard was the fastest DNF I have ever done, I think. Like, since The Jungle in high school. It was the fastest book I have ever DNF'd, because the action starts pretty fast. So I will say that if that's your thing, you're gonna love that book, probably. I stopped at, like, what, chapter 2, maybe? I don't know where I was. If that's what you love, you're gonna love it. If that you were like me and that's not something you love, or that kind of thing is particularly triggering for you, you're not going to have a good time, and I do not recommend. I don't know if all of Christina Lauren's things are like that. It does seem like, from what I've seen more about it, that was like supposed to be a fan fiction of either Twilight or 50 Shades, perhaps. I don't know. One of them, dear God. Fan fictions of 50 Shades. Oh my god. So anyway, if it was supposed to be one of those, that's where that's at. Anyway, I know that doesn't mean that all their writing is going to be like that, and I know that they're heralded as a great romance novelist. So I guess maybe at some point I will try one of their other books. If you have read their books and they don't write like that all the time, and they have actual nice, okay, maybe not nice is not the right word. If they have romances that are based on respect, that you can tell me about, please let me know down below. And maybe at some point I will try to check them out again. But at this point, I don't want anything to do with their writing again. But if their other stuff is different, just let me know, and I might reconsider when I allow myself to buy books again. I hope that 2021's reading is much better. I hope the world is much better, although at this point, right at the moment, it doesn't look like it. But I'm still hopeful. Anyway, cheers, you guys. See you in the next video.